Welcome to the Irish Pagan School podcast. Your hosts are authors and co-founders of the Irish Pagan School here in County Waterford, Ireland, Laura O'Brien and Jon O'Sullivan. Fáilte.
Could you face down a three-headed monster from the Otherworld? Well, Dagda Eve August Fáilte. Hi, hello, and welcome. Jon O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School. And that is a feat which has been completed according to our stories by none other than Amairgene, a poet or maybe a warrior from the Ullid tribe. So, I have been diving deep into Ireland's mythology and lore and exploring the monstrous, the marvelous, and the weird. Before Ireland was known as the land of saints and scholars, it was the land of heroes and monsters. And one of the places very commonly associated with monstrous incursion from the other world is none other than Rathcroghan, the area of Queen Maeve, specifically a place known as Oweynagat, the Cave of the Cats. Now, in our lore and in our mythology, Oweynagat is said to be the fit abode of the Morrigan, which is an access point from our world into the other world. Some translations portray it as Ireland's hellmouth or a gate to hell, but a lot of that is colored by bias from the early Christian monks who wrote down the stories, and that's why it's very blatant to see how they were portraying the narrative involved. But we do have a specific tale known as the Cath Mag Muckrama, the Mag Muckrama, and it's old Irish, so I'm trying to pronounce it as best I can. But essentially, it is called this place because of certain magical pigs that had come out of the Cave of the Cats, the other world. This story is set within the Ulster cycle, where these vast, monstrous boars or pigs come out of the other world and they start to rot and ruin all of Connacht, so much so that nothing would grow for 7 years after they got into a field. It was also said that these muckrama, these massive pigs, couldn't be counted. No one could actually count how many there were until Queen Maeve herself came on her chariot to actually count them. And it was she who was able to lay hand on one and tear its skin off in one go. So again, it was a place of heroes and monsters. It's not all green rainbows and shamrocks here. There are some very detailed and scary kind of tales. But I did mention a three-headed monster from the Cave of the Cats, and that is none other than a creature known as Ellén Tríchend, or Ellén Three-Headed. Now, the Tríchend is easily translated. It does mean three-headed, but the problem is the Ellen word is not so easily translated. Some translate it as a swarm or collection of triple-headed creatures that came out, reminiscent of other stories of monsters from the Cave of the Cats, of birds, flocks of birds that would come out and leave pestilence with consuming all of the grain all around them. But others would actually say that it is specifically a singular bird-type creature with 3 heads. I think that's Whitley Stokes who does that translation. But there's another translation, another suggestion from O'Reilly. O'Reilly going through and looking at these stories equates Ellén Tríchend from the battle with Amairgene, who was a warrior poet of the Ullid, who was the tribe of Ulster during the Ulster cycle, who was also the father of the hero Cumhaill, one of the great heroes of Ulster. There's the rivalry between none other than Lair Búideach, Cumhaill and Cú for who is the best in all of Ulster. And Cumhaill is a really close run on that one. But Amairgene is said to have been the father of Cumhaill, and when Ellén Tríchend came out of the Cave of the Cats, it faced none other than Amairgene there, and Amairgene alone battled back this monstrous creature into the other world. O'Reilly also suggested in their view or translation of it that the Ellen word equates to Alan, which we see later on in the Fionn cycle as the fire-breathing monster that would come every Samhain and burn Tara to the ground. And one of the feats for the young Fionn McCool, the titular hero of the Fionn cycle, was to stand the guard at Samhain on Tara and prevent it from being burned to the ground. He does this with the benefit of his magical spear, which helps drive a magical sleepiness off of him, and then he's able to battle back this fire-breathing monster. So we have many different monstrous and mythical and wondrous creatures. People trying to look at this and equate it to, well, is this Ireland's dragons? Is this how, the story and the lore of dragons made it out of Ireland? We've many kind of conversations about creatures known as peist or pests, peist being the Irish word, and them conflicting against saints, in fact, where saints would abjure these monstrous creatures to get them to move out of Ireland. Not Patrick getting rid of snakes. That is a whole other kind of thing. But the River Lee, in fact, that runs down through Cork, has its origins in a place called Gougonbarra up in the mountains. And it's called River Lee because there was a paist or a monster in that lake, and a, a saint came along and drove it out of the lake by praying at it. And whenever the poor monster got bedraggled and tired from dragging itself down out of the mountains towards the sea, it would lie down. And then all the people would come along and they would call the saint and say, "It's in a lee, it's in a lee," in that it's lying down again. And then the saint would come along and hoosh it on with its prayers until it dragged its body all the way out and created the River Lee. So there are many stories that we have of individuals facing down against monstrous creatures from the other world and monstrous creatures in Ireland. I hope you have enjoyed this one. If you'd like to know more, make sure you do the like, subscribe, and follow along to the content. There is also a year's worth of free teaching and resources on Irish spirituality, paganism, and mythology, and culture and folklore at irishpagan.school/free. Until next time, look after yourself, take care, agus long. Goodbye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a positive review in your podcast listener. Then head over to irishpaganschool.com and enroll in one of our free or paid courses. Slán go fóill, and we will see you next time.